Top of the morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Celtic Coach radio show where science, spirituality, and self-discovery meet. Aha, we're going to be talking about self-discovery in a big way today. Talk about the look of the Irish. We got two for the price of one today. Our show today, we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of coaching. Now, I know there's a lot of books out there about how to be a great coach, but there's no books out there that I could find till now on how to be a great client.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches are a little bit like archaeologists, we help the client to dig for the gold that's, hidden within, but we're also like plumbers because sometimes that digging can get pretty messy. And this book that we're going to talk about today is going to help coaches and clients be more like archaeologists, where they dig deeper and wider together without bursting any pipes. Both of the coaches have had a considerable impact on my coaching and business building career over the years. Karen has definitely inspired me to get moving, to give myself a kick up the arse when I need it. And Alex, on the other hand, has kind of inspired me over the years with his books on how to slow down and be a little bit more mindful about how I'm building my business, how I'm coaching. If Marianne Williamson and Thich Nhat Hanh, if they were coaches, they'd be Karen and Alex. Alex is the author of 4 books. Karen is the co-author of 3 books. And between them, they've got many, many years. I won't even go into how many. Let's just say I had hair back in the day. But between the two of them, they've been coaching and serving people for a long time. And both of these lovely coaches, to me, are a great example of what service in action really looks like. So please put your virtual hands together and welcome to the Celtic Coach radio show, Karen Davis and Alex Mill.
Oh, that's very sweet, Dermot.
All right, I wish I had some hand applause. I have harp music. I mean, does that count?
Well, you were talking about pipes. I thought you were going to bring up the bagpipes.
Plumber pipes. They make a sound, Alex. I was kind of laughing today when I was thinking, yeah, coaches are a little bit like plumbers. All right. So you guys have a new book, and I loved it. I absolutely love. It was kind of like an Irish cup of tea. It had flavor. It was helpful, and it went down pretty easily. So I really enjoyed the book, Karen. Welcome to both of you. We have an audience today. We thought we'd bring in some of the coaches. They're all coaches here today from the school, from our school, the Art and Science of Business Building, to come in and ask you a few questions. So we'll throw those in as we go through today. But let's start off with something simple. Why a book on coaching for clients? Even though coaches are going to buy this book and give it to their clients, right? But why a book for clients?
Let me take that one.
Go for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this was actually Alex's idea, his genius. We were walking one morning, and as we do on Saturdays and Sundays, we go out walking with our dog Jax. And Alex said to me, he said, I would love to have like a little ebook for my clients that really gets them prepared for the coaching, so they know what to expect in the coaching with me. And I stopped in my tracks, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is brilliant. We have to do it. We have to write that book. And then it took a couple of years for us to actually sit down and put the book together. But we just kept brainstorming ideas of what could go into the book. And we knew we didn't want it to be cumbersome. We knew we wanted it to be really just short, sweet, to the point, because a lot of my clients who are executives, entrepreneurs, they don't like to read. And so giving them a big book would be very intimidating, but a 146-page book, they can handle. And
Yeah, I like
so,
it. I liked it for that reason, actually.
yeah,
That it's short and sweet, you know.
yeah.
Not like an Irishman at all, but I really enjoyed it.
You know, and if I might add, Dermot, the
Please.
other point is that what you said earlier, that there is no other book out there on the market for clients. And there's just so many gems in there for coaches and the relationship that they have with their clients. So it was really important for us to get this out into the world, as opposed to just, you know, do it for ourselves.
Yeah.
It was, made a lot of sense.
Very cool. I think we'll have a little bit of fun, and let's, you know, because I don't want to rabbit on here. I could rabbit on for an hour. It'll be easy for me, but I want somebody else to rabbit on. So Jasmine has been with me for 2 years. She's the TA as part of the program. Karen, Karen, you've been to the program. It's funny, actually, I've interviewed both of you guys separately. So we're nice that we're doing that today. Jasmine, why don't you start us off with a question? And we've kind of staggered it, so it's Karen, Alex. But you know, if you guys want to answer it together, you know,
sure.
you could do that too. All right, Jasmine, start us off.
All right. Well, thanks, Karen and Alex. So the question for either of you is, I'm working with a client who's struggling with completing her action steps around a particular topic. I've brought it up in coaching. We've done coaching around it, this topic and her action steps, but things are still not getting done. I want to maintain the relationship with the client, but I also want to support her growth for herself and the growth that she said she wants. So what can I do to support the client moving forward?
Want to take it?
Sure, besides giving her our book.
That's a really good answer.
Yes. It's actually not a terrible idea, because it's an indirect way of empowering the client to show up. Like maybe there's something that your client is not saying or feels comfortable enough to say, or there's something going on in that person's life and maybe they don't feel like it's appropriate to bring to the particular coaching you're doing. And so a lot of what we cover in the actual book is how to create agreements with clients and how they actually sabotage sometimes unintentionally. I mean, there's a whole chapter just about that very topic about not showing up and not doing the action steps. It centers around my brother. I don't know if you've actually read the book yet, or you're about to, or you're going to. But the story about my brother is that he wanted to get guitar lessons, and he was actually driven to a little guitar studio. It was a music shop, and it was a short session weekly. And so my mother decided she was just going to sit in the car instead of go back on home. And so he was there playing maybe the first 2 weeks. And then my mom noticed something really interesting, is that my brother would disappear for most of the session. And that happened for the next 2 times. And my mother finally asked, "Hey, what's going on here?" He says, "Well, he's asking to go to the bathroom, and he's allowing them, but the sessions are only half hour. And of course, he's trying to avoid the actual task of doing what he wanted." So, my whole thing around, if you wanted to work with your client on this very thing, and I imagine you may have brought this up, he or she, I forget, did you say it was a he or she? I keep calling
it a she, yeah, she.
Okay. So so she may just need some encouragement around like what's going on inside around all of this, because this specific type of coaching that I do with my clients is around a lot about what the voices in our heads are saying. Mm-hmm. And if I were working with her, I would find out, okay, instead of making it something like, you ought to be doing this and you're not, it'd be like, what's getting in the way? so a lot of times I talk about it, it is the voice that's talking us out of doing it. And I would really just want to get curious about what it is saying. And I don't care what it is, because I want my client to know that I am on her side. All I want is for my client to have an experience of being challenged, but also successful. And so maybe whatever it is too much of a stretch. Maybe there are things that are coming up along the way that are unaccountable for. And so I would want to get really clear on what's going on up here and know that this is a safe conversation to have around that. And seriously, the derailer section might be a very helpful chapter for her to check out. I think it's actually a sample chapter from our book that you can download.
Yeah, you could download it if you go to my site, Jasmine. A couple of other ideas. One is that, is it just one action that she's not taking, one in particular, or many actions that she's not taking?
It's just this one action, just this one particular action. It's sort of, she's stumbling over it quite a bit and can't seem to move beyond it.
Okay, awesome. So in that case, then the direction that I would go is what Alex was saying, is really trying to understand what is it that's getting in the way of her creating this. And one thing that Rich Litvin, I worked with Rich many years ago, and Rich Litvin, and he said to me, he said, Karen, you can't want for something more than your client does. And so oftentimes, if I see this dynamic going on, I'll just be straight with the client and say, hey, are you open? Are you open to some feedback? And if I have permission, I'll say, I'm noticing that you say that you want XYZ, and I really want that for you as well, but I can't want it for you more than you want it for yourself. And so if you want it for yourself, let's realign. Let's figure out what is getting in the way of you being able to do XYZ. And so that's the direction. I'd be very clear, direct, and really point out what you're seeing. So Alex, he goes right after the voices and points to the it, not the person. And I go more, for the, let's look at why it's not happening. It's the same type of thing, different language.
Yeah, beautiful. You don't talk about tar and feathering your clients if they don't do that.
We forgot that chapter.
Well, there's a section on the dolphin and the wiffle ball bat.
Yeah. I like to threaten my clients with flogging, tar and feathering. I want to read something from your book because I think it ties in nicely what Jasmine is talking about. And for those of you who just joined, we're talking to Karen Davis, Alex Mill about their new book, How to Get the Most Out of Coaching, a client's guide for optimizing the coaching experience. I invite all the coaches to get this book and give it to your clients. Because a lot of coaches, Karen, we struggle with we've learned from Steve that coaching is a relationship. And a lot of coaches, especially new coaches, they struggle with, well, what kind of a relationship do I need to have with a client? So this book answers that. I want to talk about coachability for a moment, because I think it's a really important topic. And actually, my favorite chapter in your book was the coachability one, because I didn't know that. I'm going to take that now and start teaching it like I know it. It says, so this chapter is improving your coachability, chapter 3. And it says, you wouldn't have picked up this book in the first place if you weren't interested in improving yourself and your life. And while you want to find a truly awesome coach to accommodate you on this journey, there is someone who's infinitely more important in this process, you. Simply put, the more coachable you can be, the more you will achieve and the faster you will grow. Will you talk a little bit about coachability? Why is that so important? How as coaches do we know if a client is coachability, and what is coachability?
So coachability is what you're looking for in your clients if you're a coach. And if you're a client, it's these traits and attributes that we all have but some of those may be dormant within us. And so when we're coaches and we're in conversations with potential clients, we want to be looking for 2 or 3 of these traits. Do they have a bias for action? Are they very open? Do they have strong opinions? Are they powerful? So we want to look for some of the attributes, and then as we start to work with them, we can coach to some of the other attributes. So they don't have to show up with all the attributes, but so we can help them. They're all there inside of every one of us. It's just a matter of bringing them forward. And so that's what we mean by coachability. And we go through and talk about some of the traits that we felt were the most important. And I work with a small group of executive coaches, and I ran it past them. And we had a great morning. We were just playing and coming up with all kinds of different traits and attributes. And so we took, I think, the top 10 and put them in the book.
Yeah.
So,
How would a client know? How would a coach know that a client is not coachable?
It actually came up as we were putting the book together, and it's an interesting thing because it's subjective 100%.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's hard to tell actually how much of it is them or how the relationship that we have. So
Yeah.
if it's early on, it could be that the coach is not jiving exactly with the client or the potential client, depending on where you are in the relationship. Open, I don't know, maybe I'm the first male person this woman I'm talking to is even considered to be your coach. So it's hard to tell right away, but it'll develop in the conversation, and inviting them to rate themselves as they're reading the book, as well as a little guide to go through, because it could be that this is something that you give to the person that you're looking at coaching, and having them perhaps fill out on a scale of 1 to 10. How open are you? How are you with being vulnerable? How are you with taking action? And then you'll start to see that's actually not a bad idea to have them do that at the beginning. And then
you should have had that in the book, Alex.
Okay, you download this little PDF where you fill out this little form, and it might be helpful to use that as a guide along the way in the coaching that you have. So interesting, you said that this, and so tell me about times when you were taking action and what's going on here, perhaps. So Steve has this great story in one of his books about a client that says, I never finished anything, and then he goes on to coach that client on, well, did you tie your shoes this morning? Or did you just put them on? Oh yeah, I guess I did finish that. I did finish time. So he went through a whole list of things that he actually did, and found this one thing or just something in the backyard that hasn't been done. And it just put everything into perspective. Yeah. I know it's a long and winded way for me to answer the question, or I'm kind of skirting around it. It's hard for a coach to determine right off the bat.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Yeah. But I love that you said it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And that coachability that comes out more and more as that relationship gets built. So I love that you highlighted that, Alex. We have a question around coachability. So why don't we go to the lovely? I wish I had some kind of different music. Harps is all I have right now. I have some crickets. But all right. Anyway, Alex, we got a question, and again, both of you can take it, but once we let the crickets. Okay, thank you. Let's hear from Sherry J. Sherry, why don't you ask your question? It's a really nice question, actually, around, I think, coachability.
Hello, Karen and Alex. So my question is, I have a client who I'm directing to do visualizations when she is on her own because she can't do this in the session. And my question is, how do I gently nudge this client to visualize and meditate in the session.
And you want her to visualize in the session?
So any as if shift or visualization, not any, but she freezes up and she can't do it.
Oh,
But if
okay.
if I can then direct her, let's say to do she wants to go away from anxiety, and here's anxiety, and visualize a bridge. If I can give her an outline, she can do it by herself and then come back to me the next week, but she can't do it in the session.
Okay, it's kind of like a little bit around what I was talking about with Jasmine, is I would want to, I'm just such, I realize I just work with people on the inside out level so much that I would want to get down to, like, what is it? Maybe she's told you what goes on for her around the topic of doing a visualization in the middle of a session. I mean,
well, I've asked her, when she does yoga 4 times a week. So I'm like, at the end of yoga, when you lay on the floor, I call it the snoring part. I know there's another
Shavasana.
Yeah. She can't do that either. She gets really tense and she hears everything around her. But if she's by herself, she can relax and meditate and visualize.
Yeah, again, it's kind of like a combination of what I brought up before, and also Karen had brought up that, like, I don't want something for somebody that, I mean, I don't know how much of that is actually required, or you could find out what's behind that if you wanted to. I don't know if that's the central part of the coaching that you're actually doing with this person. Like, does this person have a desire to one day be able to be comfortable enough to close their eyes and be in a room with other people? Because maybe it's just like one, so for me, it's like a relationship of troubleshooting. It's like, okay, can you do with one eye closed, or instead of both eyes, or is it I don't know. I would make it light instead of any extra pressure put on the person to be able to do something. Another thing that I do with folks that I work with too is that there's this loving mentor aspect that cares about them and wants them to be successful with it. And so it's a collaboration between you and her to find out what would make it possible, right? Maybe she just needs some reassurance, like, what is it? What would be reassuring to you right now that would help you with whatever the situation that you're in? So you mentioned anxiety. So it's like, so if someone who loved you unconditionally were there with you, what might they say to you to help you through this? So that even if she doesn't experience you as that person, you would get a sense of like what that person would be like for her. So anyway, I don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah, and Karen, I've run into this a few times. Any thoughts on that, Sherry J? Was that helpful? Should we tar and feather Alex, or is he safe for now?
Or is there any other questions?
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, Karen, I know that I want to go to the book here in a moment, but I know that you also work with corporate executives a lot. And I've worked with a few in my time, and I steer away from saying the word visualization. Do you have those guys visualize? Do you say the word visualization to them?
So I was trained through Newfield, which is ontological coaching, which is the metaphysical study of being. And we were always trained to start with a centering, very much how you started this group today. And I will bring that in if my clients request it, if they're open to something like that. Typically, what I find is they're ready to get right down to business.
Yeah.
and so, I always want to be very inviting for people. I want to invite them into opportunities and to stretch them. But I take it nice and easy, nice and slow, and I meet them where they're at. So wherever they're at, that's where I'm going to be. And so if they're open, absolutely.
Yeah. And I've had clients tell me, I don't like that word visualization, and I'll say, well, what's a better word? And they'll say, seeing or creating, or something like that.
Great.
You know what's really interesting, Dermot? Was a little bit of a curveball for me. I think I've only done a guided visualization twice with somebody in all my time of coaching.
Wow.
people. So yeah, it's really about what's coming up in the moment, and it would be something that I would ask. And if it was not something that they were open to doing, then that's always an option.
Yeah. And if I see, like, if I'm working with someone and they come here to the studio and I see that they're nervous, then I do whatever is necessary in order to create a space that's really sacred and safe for them. If that's just taking some breaths and synchronizing our breathing, whatever is necessary in the moment is what I do. Mm-hmm.
How perfect into our next little, I got a question here for both of you. Again, it's on the chapter Coachability because I really liked it. But I love the chapter on, we'll try and get to it, setting the ground rules, where you were like, here's questions for you and your coach, and here's questions for the coach to ask the client. I was like, oh, wow, I've heard a lot of questions, but these were a lot of new ones. So again, I will be stealing those and making them and charging people to listen to me ask them. All right. Willingness to accept guidance. Your coach's job is to help disrupt the status quo and give you a new perspective. Can you talk a little bit about that? Your coach's job is to help disrupt the status quo. How do you do that as a coach with the client? And how do your clients receive it?
Yeah, so so I trained in a Zen monastery for close to 14 years, and there's this
only 14 years, Alex?
Only 14. I know. Well, I actually was 13 and a half. I just rounded it up. So yeah, it's only 13 and a half. And so,
okay. All right. Well, I'm sure you'll have something to say about this.
Leading people up to that. So yeah, so there's this misconception, I think, a lot of times about like what goes on in Zen monasteries or people who practice. They think it's either you don't wear a watch, you just kind of come and go. It's a very leisurely kind of thing. We just have incense burning. We sit under trees all day. And so it's actually, well, there are plenty of stories on the opposite extreme too, where it's just this somber and dark and quiet experience too. So we got two extremes. And somewhere in the middle, my experience of it is that it's a big disruption. The only way you can actually see the system that is operating us is by throwing things into the mix. And so we had an expression that everything in life is an opportunity to see how we cause ourselves to suffer so that we have the opportunity to actually drop that and choose something different. And so disruption was a huge part of my experience while I was training. And Steve often talks about, Steve Chandler, our coach, he had brought in that he's a provoker. He likes to, the whole experience of coaching is an opportunity for people to face things that they may never have faced before. And I certainly had that experience while I was training, and it was intentional. It was things were just done so that we can see how we do ourselves and choose something different for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so even all along throughout the coaching, I think the setup, and that's part of what the agreements are, whatever you create with them is that, hey, this is what the relationship's about. I know, especially in the kind of coaching I do, we all have this going after us. And so my agreement is I'm on your side, like we said earlier, and I'm going to do everything I can to show you how it does what it does to you so that you can be free of it. And funny enough that the disruption is the biggest element of that. And so for me, in my experience, it's a huge foundational point that, and as long as the client knows that that's what we're doing, that's how it becomes inviting for them, because they know what it's like to have the status quo going on all the time. I mean, that's the whole chapter, with my brother playing the guitar. Like he knows that he wants to be able to do this, but the comfort of not doing it is outweighing the discomfort of actually hearing notes that don't sound like his favorite rock band, Kiss. And so now it's just a matter of how can I help you through this part, and this disruption is going to be part of it.
Yeah, and for those listening, the reason his brother and Alex wanted to learn the guitar is because they used to listen to Kiss and play the air guitar in the living room.
Correct.
Back in the days of big hair. Bring back the 80s.
Oh,
Karen, would you mind sharing a story
Sure.
of how you disrupt the status quo with your clients? Like, how do you do
Yeah.
that? Tar and feathering is always an option, but how do you disrupt the client's status quo so they get out of that comfort zone? What do you do?
Well, Dermot, I ask really bold questions in the sessions. I evoke their own inner wisdom through the questions that I'm asking. And I allow those questions to come through me. So it is almost as if it's being sourced through me to the client. And I use my intuition, which helps guide me with where I'm going with the client. And the client, their egoic mind or resistance or the voices wants to keep them on their default path. And our job is to get them on a created path. And the way that I do that is by asking them questions that no one else in their life is willing to ask them.
Yeah. Do you have a little story, Karen, that you could share with us around that?
Story. Yeah. I'll share a story. I'll share it quickly here. There was a gentleman I just worked with, and he is an entrepreneur, and he was working very, very long hours. And he called, and a client I'm working with had referred him, they're best friends. And he wanted to come in for a session. I had an introductory 30-minute call with him. And I knew right away that I needed to have a very powerful agreement that he would actually show up for the session. And we ended up putting it out almost a month on my calendar. And so I had a very powerful agreement with him that he would be willing to schedule everything else in his life around this 2 hours with me. And that the only exceptions were if he were sick or if he had an emergency. And so he agreed. And sure enough, the Friday before he was due to come, he sent me a text and said, I hate to do this, but I just had to fire my largest client and everything's blowing up, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Story.
Yeah. And so I was very powerful. And this was just through text, because I was traveling, I was in Arizona, and I just sent him a text back and just said, hey, if you want it, are you sick or is it an emergency? That was the first thing I asked. And he came back and said, no. And I said, okay, if you're willing to honor your agreement with me, then I can help you step off your default path, because right now you are on your default path. And this is all through text. Normally I would say, call me, but I wanted to be able to get right back to him. And I was about to go into my session with Hardison. And so I was like, I need to get a response. So that's just one example of me working with someone who I'm not even working with. And he showed up and he had a session that blew his mind. And so I could go into that if you wanted me to as well.
Yeah. I think it's in the book where you talk about, and this really hit home for me, where, people, clients, oh, I got so much going on. Oh God, I can't make the session, 24 hours before and the coach is like, oh, okay.
Right.
And you asked in the book, well, would you do that if you were going to the airport for a flight? And
right.
the answer
That's
is
showing
no.
up late, Dermot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's clients. So in my world, these executives, they go from meeting to meeting to meeting,
Mhm.
and they schedule them back to back. And so they're used to showing up 5 minutes late for all their meetings, and they think I'm just another meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not another meeting. And that particular situation was when I was creating the agreements at the front end of the relationship. And we had to skip that agreement because, again, I'm co-creating and that particular client would not agree to it. So we left it for the end. And then what I asked was, I said, have you ever missed an airplane? Because it gave me some time to think as we went through the other agreement.
That's great.
A flight. And he's like, no, never. I said, great, that your coaching sessions are going to be just like you catch an airplane. You're going to arrive on time or the door shuts.
End of story.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I had a client about 4 weeks ago and text me all in capital letters. Can't make the session tomorrow. Life is so hectic. I put out my back. The dog's not well. The cat's eating my homework. Everything has gone to hell. I feel like crap. You know, basically, big long text, like half a story. I won't be able to make the session tomorrow. And I just text back, get your arse in that session at 3 p.m. Send. Because I know and you know that that's when the client really needs coaching.
That's right.
When their life has gone to hell. When everything's up in a handbasket, that's when the client really needs more than that. And that session, by the way, with the client was the best that we've ever had.
That's
because she realized that most of the crap that was going on in her life was actually going on in her head. There wasn't much going on in life at all. It was this big story she had made. All right.
And that's the most compassionate thing that us as coaches that we can do for our clients is to take a stand for them.
Yeah.
Just like you did.
It's like the alcoholic metaphor. You don't let your alcoholic cousin Bobby into the party to keep drinking. You interrupt and do what is most helpful to him, and that is to cut him off and have him stop. That's the relationship we have with the voices. And most people have been taught to be nice and polite and just go along with the drama or the racket that people are running. And doing the most compassionate thing. And
we're not serving our coaches by going along with the nonsense, you know. All right. Speaking of wonderful coaches, Ella, you're up next. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hello, Karen and Alex. I am a very new coach, so the question I would like to ask is very important to me. How can I create the best experience at the first conversation with a prospect client?
And you also had astonish in there. How can I create a great experience and astonish the client, right, Ella?
Yes. Yes,
I like that you use that word. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, that's a fantastic question. And what I usually do, Ella, is I will start with a couple of agreements with the client. Sometimes I find that the coaches that I start working with, that they skip that part even very early on when they're talking to a new prospective client and they've invited them into an experience. And so I might create a couple of questions around, a couple of agreements around coachability. So I might talk to them about what it means to be coachable. And you'll learn that in the book. There's several examples. And then I might talk to them about confidentiality. And typically what I find when I'm having that conversation around agreements, that it begins to relax them, that they go, okay, you know, she's going to be really open and working with me. And I feel like this is a sacred space because everything we're talking about is going to be held in confidence. And she shared with me that she might share some stories of her own experiences or those experiences of her clients, and she won't use their names or their businesses, and that's in mutual confidentiality. And so I'll try to make it so that the space that I'm creating is a sacred space. Okay. And then typically what I do before I ever do a very first session is I've had a 30-minute conversation with them to get to know them and to find out more about their background. It's very, it borders social, and it's just calming, and they get to know me. So I'm not just starting cold with them. And then after that, I send them 5 questions. And those questions are around, what are your top 3 coaching goals? Another one might be, what's missing from your life, and how are you keeping it out? Another one might be, a newspaper reporter is going to write a story about you. What might be the top 3 headlines? So just questions to get them thinking about themselves. And you can always springboard into a session from any of their answers that they've written. So if they come in and they don't know what they want to be coached on, you have the answers to those questions that you can springboard from. Make sense?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
How was that? Ella, what did you hear in that was helpful for you?
I think that that agreement is very important, and that I can create that sacred space that they feel comfortable. Confidentiality is very important as well, and that conversation with them and that questions to know them, I think, more.
Yeah, it'll really set the stage for an extraordinary session with them, because they don't always know what to expect when they come into coaching, especially if they haven't been coached before. And that's one of the questions I always ask early on in that 30-minute introductory conversation is, have they ever been coached before? And if they say yes, I say, great, tell me about that experience. Because you want to know what it was that they really liked about that experience, or what they didn't like about the experience, that type of thing.
Yeah, beautiful. Karen, there's a lot of new coaches on the call. And I know for myself that I'm going to be sending this to the college, to all the new coaches. What advice would you give new coaches who are just finishing up their training and now they're going out to build a coaching business? What advice would you give to them? I know we're kind of sidelining a little bit the client-coach relationship, but since we have you here, what would you say to those new coaches?
Well, my number one piece of advice, I think Alex thinks he knows what I'm about to say.
He knows everything about you.
Yeah, would be, and I write about this in the chapter that I wrote on When All Boats Rise, which is 12 coaches on how service leads to prosperity. And so the number one thing that I would recommend to new coaches that are coming out of coach training school, so they've gone through and they've worked and they've done some training, and they've done some probably pro bono work in coaching, or they might have some paid clients, is to stretch and hire a coach and work with a coach after coach training school. Do one-on-one coaching and really stretch in terms of your investment in yourself and in your business to work with a higher level coach than where you're at. And then from there, keep growing and keep learning. So get your hands on every resource, every video, every book that you can possibly get your hands on. It's really important to be an avid learner. And Alex and our house is filled with books.
Yeah, just no shortage of things to put into Discipline 18, which is, I think, in the Prosperous Coach book. Yeah. It's about becoming a better coach. That's why I really liked about Ella's question was, in order to ask a question like that, how can I make the first session astonishing, has to come from a place of, I want to be that kind of coach that would give a prospect or a client that kind of experience. And so just having that as the focus and the intention, and putting all of your time and energy into it. And so I've been finding all of these amazing resources on how to be a better listener, you know, how to do reflective listening, how to ask better questions. So just no shortage of things. So even if the one mantra that you have is how can I be a better coach, you're already there. You have to be sitting in that place of being in order to be asking that. So that's great.
Yeah. And I would definitely put a shout out to all of Steve Chandler's books.
Yeah.
The Prosperous Coach is a must read and read and keep reading it, rereading it. And then Michael Bungay Stanier, I want to put a shout out for him too, a Canadian, and The Advice Trap and The Coaching Habit.
Yeah.
Excellent books.
Yeah, I would add to that though, When All Boats Rise, because that's a book you co-authored that I just loved, because there was 12 coaches talking about their experience about how to build their business, and a lot of it was very, very different, you know, how they were doing it. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, thank you, Karen. I appreciate you just sharing a little bit on the business building side. I know we don't want to get into it, but I know you've had a lot of experience in that area. Okay. One of the chapters in your book is called Setting the Ground Rules. And if you just joined us, everyone, we're talking to Karen Davis and Alex Mill about their new book, How to Get the Most Out of Coaching, a client's guide for optimizing the coaching experience. But I'm going to encourage all the coaches out there to get this book, because it's going to help you to deepen your relationship with the client. And the deeper the relationship with the client, the more impact you'll have with the client, and the more times the client will keep coming back with more business and telling other people about you. And that's really important. Karen or Alex, name 3 things that is the client's responsibility in the coaching relationship.
3 things that are the client's responsibility. You want to take that on?
I can take on one.
Take it.
Just tag team. So creating the results in that they want for themselves.
Yeah, not the coach's job.
Nope. No, I'm not going to be burning the midnight oil.
Yeah, that's a really important one.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there is some confusion. I'll share a really quick story.
Please,
I have a fabulous client. He's an entrepreneur. He's been in business for 32 years. He came out in May for one of my 2-day accelerators, and it was a phenomenal experience. He came back and he said, Karen, that was the best 2 days of my 32 years in business. Great. So now he's coming out this next Monday and Tuesday, and he wants to have another accelerator. And so this is about a month ago, we're talking about it. He said, well, you know, will I have the same experience that I had before? And it was great because I had created an agreement with him in the very beginning of our relationship around results. And I said to him, I said, hey, you know, do you recall our agreements around results? And here's what I can share with you about what Monday and Tuesday will be. I am going to be here for you 100%. And I'm going to be the guide. And I'm going to really, you know, help point you in a direction that you say you want. However, it's up to you to show up 100% and for you to take action afterward. And if you do that, yes, you're going to have very similar results that you had last May. But it's on you, it's not on me. And I'm going to show up for you just like I did. And that's what I can share with you. So that's such a great one.
Yeah, the results. What might be 2 others, Karen? And then we're going to go to Jazz for a question.
You know, around, I think it's really important to be really clear about your boundaries with your clients. And so what happens in session and then what happens outside of session, a lot of clients want to be friends, and that's great. But when we're in session, we're professional, and it's not, and social is outside of our sessions. So I think having those boundaries, setting those boundaries up on the front end, really, really important. And then reinforcing those boundaries when the client ends their contract with you, so that they're not, you know, continuing to expect coaching from you when the contract's done. Yeah.
Oh gosh, how many sessions have I given away? Free. free, give. And then, eventually it's like, oh, I think I'll give up because I'm not making any money at this coaching thing. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, coaches, if there's anything that I want you to hear in that, it's really, because I used to, and I still do today, I have to be honest, Karen, I still think I'm responsible for the results. Like I have a bad session with a client and I don't call myself out on it, and I'm like, oh crap, no results in that session. So I totally resonate with that one a lot. All right, Jazz. The
Yes.
lovely Jazz, come on in and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. And thank you both for being here for us. So my question is similar. I guess it sounded like maybe the feedback from you would be the same as Ella's, but let me just ask it and you can tell me. So what are the best ways you've discovered to help clients feel comfortable with the flow of a coaching conversation? And I'm kind of speaking about people who are more sensitive, self-conscious, you get the deer in the headlights. I think I'm a pretty subtle, gentle, calm coach, but sometimes there are those people who just get that look when you ask them the simplest question. So how could I handle that?
Sure, yeah. So I'm one who likes to just say whatever is coming up for me and doing it in a way that is non-threatening to somebody. That's really the challenge that I hear you facing. It's right. So I would want them to just if something is coming up that is creating the deer in the headlights, I just want to slow down and basically just reflect whatever it is that she or he may have just said before that, rather than jumping straight through to the next question, right? So, or again, I work with a lot of people on what's going on internally. So if they're open to it, it'd be like, hey, I hope, it's kind of like asking permission repeatedly and getting, trying to see if I can get a yes from, is it okay if I ask about something that I'm really curious about right now? Because maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I just saw your energy kind of shift a little bit. It's okay, it's not a problem. But if there's something that's going on, I would love to hear about it. For me, it's like giving me an opportunity to see if I can help you with whatever that is. Again, it would really depend on the person that you're with and where you are in the relationship with them already. Again, if this is your first call with them, maybe not, maybe put on the back burner and see if that comes up again, because sometimes those things do keep coming up, and something you can work with them on.
So Jazz, one thing that Steve Chandler always did when I worked with him was he normalized everything. And so no matter what I would bring into session, Steve would normalize it by saying, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Or I experienced that. Or yes, my client over here did, that was the way it was for them as well. So everything, I thought it was horrible, like what I was bringing in, and he would normalize it. And there's something to be said for that will really begin to open up your client or your prospective client when you can normalize things for them. And it's true, like, right? When we really think about it, we all have stuff. We all have our stuff. Coaches as well.
I am, clients would often say to me, yeah, Dermot, sometimes I'm just down in the bottom. And I say, yeah, sometimes I'm down in the bottom and I bounce around down there on the bottom before I come back up. So yeah. Normalizing is good. Good, Jazz? All right, let's squeeze the lovely Amy in here. We've got about 6 minutes left in our interview, and I want to bring in Amy from Berkeley.
Great. Thank you.
You're on, Amy.
Thank you for introducing us to Karen and Alex. I'm very excited about getting your book and reading it and gifting it to my clients.
Oh,
so thank you. I'm one of those people who can tell long stories and also loves hearing long stories. How can we as coaches client our coaches so that they can focus when they also like to tell long stories?
derailer number 6. in the book.
Yeah, it's actually in the book.
Yeah, derailer number 6. We talk about clients wanting to tell long stories, and the need to have them really get focused in. So when they come into session, be really focused and stay away from the long stories. So sometimes we need to have a little bit of a background for context, but as a coach, you can always ask. Now, is this absolutely necessary for what it is that you want to be coached on? Is this particular story important for what you want to be coached on? So you can be asking questions along the way, especially if you're in minute 3 or 4 of a story. Yeah.
Is that helpful, Amy? Anything else on that for you? Good?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chapter
Yeah.
6.
And again, if you can try tar and feathering. If the client's talking too long, just have a bucket of tar next to you and just casually do, and they'll stop talking. It works every time. All right. That's terrible. I'll have to edit that out, Karen. All right, let's begin to wrap up, Karen. Karen, and then I'm going to ask Alex. I'm going to ask you the most greatest question on the planet. And I don't know it yet. It's going to come to me any second. Maybe I should put on my coaching hat. Okay. I love that you talk about sense of humor in the book, Karen. Love that you talk about that. That's not something I've seen in any, maybe Steve Chandler's. He writes with a sense of humor. But I love that you talked about that, because that's really, really important. At least it is to me, to have a sense of humor when you're coaching, because who the hell wants to hire a serious coach who only asks, deep questions? All right, I'm stalling here so that the universe can send me a great question. Oh, there it is. Still stalling. Okay. What do you want, Karen, what do you want your clients to get from reading your book?
What I would love for my clients to get, if I had one thing that they took away from the book, it would be making coaching their number 1 priority in their life. That would be the one thing. If they walked away with just one thing, they would walk in here into my studio and they would say to me, Karen, coaching is now my number 1 priority in my life. It supersedes everything, my work, my family, my, whatever, everything. And when they do that, what they're saying to themselves is, I am number 1 in my life. And once I get really clear, everything else will be clear.
Yes.
And they're going to show up so much more powerfully for the coaching, and I will be able to create a greater impact for them.
Wow.
So,
Alex, the pressure is on with this next question.
Oh,
after that answer, no comparing allowed, Alex.
Talk about ending with a. So no, there's a whole page. I just want you to know there's a whole page with that very statement.
Yep.
Is that make coaching your number 1 priority?
Yeah.
So in case you missed that there's a whole page dedicated to that one.
Well, this is a slightly twist on that question, Alex, but what do you want the coaches to walk away with from this book?
Yeah, all the things that it's a perspective from the other side, an understanding of what can I bring to the coaching that is a behind the scenes sort of thing that would help the client along. I wanted to write this for a long time, not only as something that would enable the clients that I'm working with to meet me halfway, but also keep up my game on it. And a lot of coaches have actually given us feedback about, wow, reading this book really leveled up for me how I want to show up for my clients. And the secret around this book is it's not just about getting the most out of coaching, and it's not also about being the best coach. It's about how can you get the most out of life. And so that's what I want for, if I had to answer, it'd be for both, you know, to get the most out of your experience. You're already putting in the time. Are you going to allow this to shortchange the relationship? Or are you going to show up and have adult to adult conversations to help people get from where they are to where they want to be?
All right, Alex, you saved yourself on that one. That was pretty damn good. I don't know where to pull that out, but that was pretty damn good.
The guitar was getting close. And I was just like, oh, I got it.
The hook, you know, the hook that goes over. Where can people pick up the book?
We have it on Amazon and then recently released on Booktopia, and
It should be all over the world at
All
some
the world.
point. So we released it in 2 different, you know, so there's Amazon, then there's everything not Amazon.
All
That's
right.
how I set it up. So
yeah. So in
How to
Canada,
get the most out of coaching, a client's guide for optimizing the coaching experience. Drink with a cup of tea. That's my advice for you. All right, Karen and Alex and all the coaches,
yeah,
absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for showing up, for supporting this work that Karen and Alex are doing. Thank you, coaches, for supporting my first time doing a studio audience with a double interview. I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for that.
thank you.
And to everyone out there listening, pick up a copy of the book. It's a really wonderful book and it's a nice little read. And I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help your coaching practice and certainly going to help your clients to have a better experience. So until then, thank you so much for the Celtic Coach Radio Show. Until the next time, think big, have fun, stay curious, and we shall see you down the road.
Thank you, Dermot.
Thank you, Dermot. Thank you, everybody.